Hello. Hey, Ash.
Hey Chris, how's it going?
It's going really well. How are you?
Yeah, no complaints, no complaints. Getting there and excited to see what the FUX is up
FUX.
today. Beep bop, boop boop boop.
Yes, it's you know what we do here, and we do it well. We spin a wheel. We respond, react to questions, and then we break them down because everybody's got time for a fireside chat. Like, and whether you like it or not, we're gonna have a good time.
Isn't that usually the tone of a fireside chat? Whether you like it or not, we're all going to sit here and love each other and talk about things. Yeah.
Kumbaya. On this fine,
Ugh,
fine, easy breezy Sunday morning. Yeah, we like to record on Sundays because we live like that.
respect. All right. So today, my dear Vanna, let's hit that wheel. Let's see what we got. Where we going? Ready? Beep bop boop bop click. Spinning,
I actually
spinning.
that was hardly Vanna. That was more like The Price is Right. I want to do that so badly. I just want to take that wheel and spin it with all my might.
Well, you did, and here's where we landed. Get ready. Impact or insulate the impact of no impact on us and UX. So
Okay, okay,
I'm gonna break this down, walk us through. What
okay.
are we talking about? So this is the idea of the impact on us as people in the profession of user experience when there is no impact of UX on the product, on the deciders, on the decision making, on the stakeholder, on the progress. So when we think about impact or insulate, how to protect ourselves from the reality of choices that are made about UX so that it doesn't become things we feel or think about ourselves. That's kind of where my energy vibes on that. Like, what impact do we have as people doing this work when there's no impact of our work? And how, like fleshing that out, do we have strategies for that? What are the options for that? And what does that mean more broadly for the reality of products for whom all of this awesome UX work gets done, but it goes nowhere? So how do we insulate and explore that issue about impact of UX?
Huge, huge.
This is a mighty topic, and there's going to be a lot of energies here. So, you know, feel free. You want to start?
Yeah. My
Cool.
first reaction to that, reflecting on my own experience, is to try to know yourself as best as possible, or get to know yourself as best as possible. And what do I mean by that? And I learned this from one of my favorite ex managers from previous gigs ago, right? And knowing what you believe in, knowing what you want, and what that sort of equation looks like when you hold it up to what your experience is within a team, within a department, within an organization that says it values UX, and that's a shifting landscape within a bubble already, because there could be virtue signaling. They could be like, yes, we have UX and we fully empower our people, but maybe it's not the case. And if it is the case, it's rare. But when you have a design student who managed to pivot into a new UX role within her existing company, and fortunately, when I catch up with her, she's let me know that her PM her PM goes back to the client after having sessions with design, engineering, and like these collaborative strategy sessions. And if something is not feasible, they go back to the client and let them know that it's not possible, or we need to rethink what it is that we're pursuing to make sure that it's still bringing value in relation to what our roadmap objectives are. So that is very, very rare. Most
I've never
often,
heard of that. Yeah, that's
it blew
awesome.
my mind too.
Yo.
And then more often, like rare but possible, and dare I say, I want to say Valhalla, but it doesn't work. Anyways,
Yeah,
well,
ideal, perhaps.
ideal, right?
Yeah.
And then across my experience in like these kind of spheres of my experience, it's been a weird blend between where it's like almost toxic environment. It's stagnant. The work you do has no value. You're
Yeah.
told to simply do it, and and sometimes it can resemble a more waterfall approach and execution. Sometimes, I don't want to demonize PMs or engineering. I think it's more a more I think the organization and leadership is more to blame because of that type of culture and execution.
Yeah.
There are those scenarios where no one is working together. Everyone is either afraid or they're so locked into their day-to-day and process, which they may be very good at doing. But the sort of like trifecta of PM design and engineering is not ideal. It's broken. And so there's that kind of worst scenario. Then there's something in like in the middle, like ideal, middle, and something else, which is like not that nice. In the middle, where people are trying, where teams are trying, they may not know. Sometimes they may be ignorant. Sometimes they're stubborn, but they have an open ear. And I find most of my experiences have been like in this kind of zone. But when it's here, it still has potential to be great because you can feel that. I mean, at least if people are open-minded, there can be a lot of room to do some dynamic stuff. But it depends. And like throughout all of it, going back to what I was saying to kind of like ramp down, knowing yourself, trying to get to know yourself, what you believe in, and then I think another key component is the state of where you work and the people that you're working with. So that's my first scan on this. What do you think?
No, it's yes, and I think you kind of like ticked all the boxes we usually come back to, the themes and the threads. And here we're thinking about like culture and toxicity and respect for the entity, for the UX, for the people. When you talk about culture, when you talk about respect for UX, this idea of insulating, you can help to kind of protect yourself from bad cultures, but that doesn't make them less bad. And so I think part of this is also speaking to your point about knowing yourself. Like, I'm one of those people who always wants to champion people. Like, I legit this morning opened up Baldur's Gate 3 and I had an option to be like a folk hero, like take down the tyrant. I was like, yes, like that's my energy. I don't deal with bullies. I don't play with that shit. And so I think when we talk about insulating, some of that is about protecting, but knowing yourself about whether this is, to your analogy from a few episodes past, is this a lily pad? Can you jump? When can you jump? If you show up and you don't feel good and you're being hurt, that's not your fault. That is an unhealthy environment. And so I think when we talk about insulating, we can consider strategies about, to your point, the awareness of what is the culture, the awareness of what is the decision process. Where does UX fit in that? To your point about a trifecta, who are the power holders and does your work have impact? And so if it winds up being something that just gets delivered and abandoned, very pageantry, we did the thing, we ticked the box, who cares, gone. Where do you sit with that? If you're like, I don't give a shit, I'm getting paid, preach, cool, you do you. But if you're like, this is wearing me down, I think that's where the idea around you kind of insulate to tolerate. But, if you can go, you should. But that's about knowing who you are and if you can from a place of privilege and safety. If you can do it, you got something else lined up, you looking for something else, cool. Because the product suffers is one end of this. The other one is that we suffer as practitioners of this hyper-disciplined space. Because impact is not always something that happens with the work in UX. And we know that, right? I've seen it go good, but I've seen it be like, woo.
Yeah.
That's a sound effect for terrible. Go ahead, Chris.
There are two things that there's so much that you said that I really love, and this reminds me of connecting with your peers, both in your in your workspace, or outside in the community of your profession, or just like friends or whoever. Connecting with peers, connecting with people, getting outside perspective. Sometimes, like Ashley and I do this stuff almost every day.
Yeah.
Because like community is key. And whether you go to networking events or you end up making an online buddy and or someone that's in your work culture, in or out of it, it's very helpful because especially if that person's in the same field as you, because you could bounce things off someone who gets it. Sit with someone who gets it is huge. And then the last thing, and you may not have enough time for it now, but like this idea, but the aspect of work that gets trashed, and what does that do to a person, even though that it may not be up to us. So that's a like a comet heading straight for Earth that you can't Armageddon Bruce Willis Ben Affleck out of the scenario.
That was the dumbest film. I'm going to ride a rocket to space and I'm going to blow stuff up because that's science. But I think your point, like when we think about the impact of no impact, I don't know. I keep seeing all this stuff on LinkedIn that's like, don't wear your work. You're better than that. Sure. But we also are all affected by our environments. And if your environment is telling you that everything you and everything your team did is shit and nobody cares and whatever, then that does have an enormous potential to have an impact. And so if the work is not having an impact, you're being impacted. That is not on you. That's when we talk about culture, when we talk about fit, when we talk about UX maturity, when we talk about like nasty people in charge, when we talk about the effect on us, we cannot exclude the reality that we wear our environments. And that is not a failure. Like we all get up in like empathy talk, be empathetic to your situation. Like of this coming full circle is like knowing who you are. And if you're not sure, if it doesn't feel right, it's not right. That's legitimately the thing. Do you need to hunker down and insulate? How long can you tolerate? And when can you get out and celebrate? And I think that ultimately is kind of the flow when you can. Yeah. Did that rhyme?
I think it did, and
I've been like haikuing by accident and stuff all week.
That's okay.
It's a verb now.
Falling leaves, cherry blossom.
No,
I don't know how to do it.
It was really rude. It was a very rude haiku, but I was like, "Is this a haiku?"
Maybe on Halloween we'll record an episode in like 90s Run DMC attire and then do an episode.
I don't need Halloween. How's tomorrow? That's still yes.
Yeah,
we should do one in costume though for Halloween.
I would like that. We have costumes.
It's my favorite day of the year. So yes.
Dig it. Thanks again for coming.
We wrap it up.
We're wrapping it up because this is how we do. Like someone's got to go and eat the donuts.
We almost made it a whole episode without talking about a food and then donuts. Nice. No. I was worried for a second. I was like, man, we did not talk about food. And then
it's my default. I'm predispositioned for the donuts, the beignets, the donuts. Anyways, yeah. Hit us up if you have any questions, comments. There are no concerns because we keep it real. And thanks again. We'll be back. I'm Chris.
And I'm Ash. And we need a sign off that isn't
shit.